thousands of people were put into a deep hypnosis by Dolores Cannon, who traveled all over the world, hypnotizing thousands of people. And while people were put under a deep hypnosis, they were all talking about the same stuff. And they were talking about how there was a call put out for volunteers to come to Earth to assist in a shift in consciousness. How crazy is that? So this shift in consciousness is basically where humans are evolving consciously. And the reason this is happening is because little humans on planet Earth are very negative, and we were on a path of destruction. This was back in World War II when we had atomic bombs, which is pretty serious. These atomic bombs that us little humans were creating could have destroyed the whole planet, but not only destroyed the whole planet, it would have had a ripple effect, and potentially we could have destroyed the universe. And this is why this call was put out for volunteers to come to Earth to assist with this shift. We need to shift because we're just too negative. So we are evolving consciously from 3D to 5D consciousness. And in this video, I'm going to explain what all of this means and what you can do to make this shift. Because guess what? Not everyone's going to make this shift. Dolores Cannon talked about how the Earth is going to split into two different timelines. And so we're going to have the 3D Earth, which is the Earth we've been on, the really negative Earth with all this anger and hate and violence and destruction. And then there's going to be the 5D Earth timeline, which is going to be a more positive and loving world. Now she says not everyone is going to make the shift to the new Earth, the 5D Earth. Some people will stay with this negative 3D Earth. And if you think, oh my God, what if that's me? Well, if this video is coming up for you and you're clicking on it, I would say you are most likely going to make the shift, because you attract things to you that you are in vibrational resonance with. So if you were open to this type of information, this video wouldn't show up for you. So the fact that it has indicates that you are someone that will most likely make this shift. The people that won't make the shift, I believe, are going to be those people that are very much in their egos, very negative, the people that just like to argue, the people that defend the system, this slavery system that's been created to crush our souls. Some people, think it's a good idea to get chips in our hands or chips in our brain. And I believe those are the types of people that will just stay with the 3D Earth. You can't save everyone. I've tried. You just can't. There are some people that just aren't open to this information, so you just have to let them be. So in order to make this shift, there are some things that we have to do. We have to be working on ourselves. We've got to raise our vibration and expand our consciousness. I've been on this journey for myself since 2019, when I had my proper spiritual awakening. Everything started clicking. It all started making sense to me. And I learned the importance of, working on raising vibration and expanding consciousness, because this is the key to being able to shift to the 5D Earth. So I'm going to share in this video how we can do that, the things that we can be doing to raise our vibration so that we can make this shift. So firstly here we have the scale of consciousness, and this was calibrated by Dr. David Hawkins using kinesiology muscle testing. And he calibrated all these different levels of consciousness. Now the ones in the red are all the low negative frequencies. And he says 85% of humans are operating in these negative frequencies. And because consciousness creates reality, this is why our consciousness, because 85% of humans are down here, this is why we're creating this reality with so much negativity. Now, he talks all about this in the book Power versus Force. Force is when you're operating in these low frequencies, which is also operating from the ego, and that's the mind. So the problem is that humans are operating from their egos. The ego is your negative, fear-based thinking. The ego is what keeps you in these negative frequencies. And this is when you're operating in force. When you operate in force, it's like, for example, let's say you're wanting to build a successful business, but no matter what you're doing, you're just hitting your head against the wall. You're not getting anywhere because you're operating in these low frequencies and you're operating in force. When you first step into courage, from pride to courage, that is the turning point. This is when you step out of force and into power. Power is these higher frequencies. And power is operating from your soul, which is the heart. So it's basically like soul and heart versus ego and mind. Ego and the mind is operating in 3D consciousness. Operating from the soul and the heart is operating from 5D consciousness. So in order to make this shift, it's about learning how to get out of the ego, stop operating from the ego, and instead operating from your soul and operating from the heart. And this is what's going to make the world a much more positive and loving place. And this is why it's important to work on your own vibration. This is how you make the shift. It's an inner game. So don't worry about what everyone else is up to. It's about you and your own inner environment. And working your way up this scale of consciousness into the higher frequencies. As you do this for yourself, you're helping the collective consciousness raise. So because we're all connected as one, there's the law of one. As you work on yourself individually, the collective consciousness starts raising. So as people, because there's a mass awakening that's happening on the planet right now, because of this shift, as people have these awakenings and they start doing the work on themselves, they start working on raising their vibration one by one by one, this is what's helping the collective consciousness raise. And then as that raises, because consciousness creates reality, that's going to start making shifts in our reality when the collective consciousness starts raising. And as this happens, I believe the old system is going to crumble because our consciousness, as we're raising it collectively, is going to make these shifts. So I think that this capitalism, this slavery system that they've created is going to crumble, and the old system needs to break down for a new one to be built. So it's a good thing. So we want to work on raising our vibration and get into these higher frequencies. We want to work on getting out of the ego and operating from your soul, operating from your heart, and operating in power. Now, what that means when you operate in power is you imagine you have like this athlete that did something really amazing, like they broke some sort of record, and it was just mind-blowing. Like, how did they do that? That was incredible. It's because they were operating in power. And he also talked about Gandhi, how Gandhi beat the British Empire. And he said the reason that Gandhi beat the British Empire is because Gandhi was operating in power, whilst the British Empire was operating in force. And he says power will always beat force. So this is why we're wanting to, work our way up this scale. Now, there are things that are weighing our energy down. So your vibration is naturally high. And the analogy I like to use for this is the buoy in the ocean. So you imagine you have a buoy in the ocean, and when you push it down under the water, as soon as you let that buoy go, it naturally raises back up to the surface. And so your vibration works in the exact same way. Your vibration is naturally high, And there are a number of things that are pulling our vibration down into these lower frequencies, weighing us down. But when we let these things go, that is when your vibration will naturally start raising back up to the higher frequencies. So the things that we need to let go of are anger and resentment. A lot of us are walking around with these stored and suppressed emotions in our body. Self-limiting beliefs. And we have a lot of these self-limiting beliefs in our subconscious minds. We have been brainwashed and programmed since the day we were born. So we are basically like a computer system. The mind and the body both run on programs. And those programs are controlling the reality that you're in, all your experiences. So if you have negative programming, you're going to create a reality with negative experiences. If you have positive programming, then you will create a reality with positive experiences. Now, a lot of us, well, most of us, because we're on this negative planet, have had all this negative programming done to us with self-limiting beliefs. Now, what quantum physics shows us is that beliefs create reality. So what you believe to be true is what you will experience. For example, if you believe money is hard to make, then money will be hard to make. If you believe money is easy to make, money will start flowing in. It's all about your beliefs. We're in our own personal reality. We're not in a big reality altogether sharing the same reality. We're in our own personal reality, and it's based off what we believe to be true. So a lot of us have these self-limiting beliefs deep in our subconscious minds, meaning we're not aware of it, but it's controlling our reality. So this is where we have to do some belief work and reprogramming the subconscious mind. I have videos on my channel that talk more about that, but it's really important deep inner work. And so the first key is becoming aware of the self-limiting beliefs that are holding us back. Once we're aware, that's when we can let them go. We want to let go of things like outcome. A lot of the times we're really outcome focused. Where are the results? Wanting the results. And that actually butchers up the energy dynamics and it keeps us in low frequencies. So it's learning to just let go of the outcome and being cool with what happens in life. If you get your desire, cool. If you don't, cool. I don't care. I'm good either way. You get into a more carefree vibration. Attachment. We've got to let go of our attachments. That's what's keeping us down here. And it was Buddha who said the root of suffering is attachments. Our past hurts. We all have had, we've all been hurt in the past. Some people just have more wounds than others, but we've all got wounds and we're not really taught how to deal with them. So instead of dealing with them, we just carry them around. Kind of like a ball and chain that we're just dragging with us wherever we go in life. And so letting go of your past hurts will free you. The same with your childhood traumas. Unresolved childhood wounds and traumas. I had a childhood filled with wounds and traumas. And I've been on that healing journey for the last 5 years. Healing a lot of these wounds and releasing them because it does keep us in these negative frequencies. So learning to let go of the past, basically. Expectations. When we have these expectations and we put them on other people, there's a really good chance we're going to end up being let down. And so it's actually better to let go of expectations and replace expectations with appreciation. So instead of expecting things from others, you just appreciate the things that other people do for you. Labels, letting go of labels. We identify with labels. So for example, you may have been told you have anxiety by the doctor. So you identify with that. I am someone that has anxiety. Your identity is playing a role in creating the reality you're in. And so identity shifting is where you shift your identity, and as you shift your identity, reality shifts with it. So your identity is creating your reality. So when you identify with having anxiety, you're going to keep creating a reality where you have anxiety. It's like one of my mentors was diagnosed with ADHD. He decided to not identify with that label. He let it go, and instead he identifies as someone that just has a lot of energy. So instead of being I'm ADHD, it's I just have a lot of energy. I just need to ground my energy. So realize you don't have to actually cling on to these labels and identify with them. Another great example of this is drug addicts or alcoholics, right? When you're an addict, especially if you're a recovering addict, if you still say I'm an addict, you're still identifying with being an addict. And then you're more likely going to relapse and fall back into those old ways. Whereas if you are a recovering addict, but you decide, I'm going to let go of this label of being an addict, I no longer identify with being an addict, then you will more likely not relapse and go back to those behaviors. And the last one is desires, our desires, the things that we're really wanting. Desire is here on the scale of consciousness, and it vibrates at 125. So it's a low frequency. So when you really, really want something, it's keeping you down here. Let go of your desire. When you let go, and you let go of the outcome, and you're good either way, your energy is more magnetic, and it draws things to you. So you'll more likely get your desires when you let go of them. So these are a list of things that we need to be mindful of and let go of to free up our energy so that our vibration can naturally raise back up to the higher frequencies. Because like I said, your vibration is naturally high. So what can we do to let go of these things? How can we raise our vibration, expand our consciousness, and clean up our energy fields? The first thing I would recommend is shadow work. So shadow work, the shadow is a psychology term coined by Carl Jung. And what the shadow is, like everyone has a shadow. And what the shadow is it's all the repressed and rejected parts of our personalities. We're not aware of our shadow, right? So our shadow's in the darkness, so to speak. It's unconscious to us. So the idea of doing shadow work is making the unconscious conscious, bringing our shadows into our awareness, because when we're not aware of the shadow, it's playing out in the background, creating a lot of problems in our lives. So for example, I'll share some examples of when the shadow comes up. When you're judging and criticizing others, that's your shadow. When you're jealous of others, trolling on social media, your triggers, when you have an emotional reaction, you're being triggered by someone, that's your shadow. So the shadow will come up in a number of different ways, like when you're blaming and playing the victim, that's your shadow. So by doing shadow work, you become aware of the shadow, so then it stops creating these problems. But also, with doing shadow work, you have to revisit the childhood and dig up the wounds and the traumas, and it's a great way of figuring out where you need healing, what your wounds and traumas actually are. So for example, someone's triggered you, you're having this emotional reaction. Instead of getting mad at that person for triggering you, be happy that they triggered you, because the shadow's coming up to the surface for you to become aware of it. So you let the triggers be the guide. Let the triggers show you where you need the healing. And this is how you find, the root cause of these things, so then you can let go of the past hurts and the traumas. So I recommend shadow work. I've got videos on my channel that talk about shadow work. I have a shadow work for beginners video if you want to check that out. It's the ultimate guide that will teach you everything you need to know. Now, the next one is reframe technique. So Dr. David Hawkins has 2 books that I've read. He's got heaps of other books, but the 2 books that I've read is Power versus Force, which is, talking about the calibrating of this scale of consciousness and the difference between operating from power and force, and pretty much how you want to be operating in these higher frequencies and operating from power. The second book I read is Letting Go. And so letting go teaches you the letting go technique so that you can make your way up the scale of consciousness. So we're going to be talking about that soon. It's a really, I don't know, just great technique to be aware of. But in the book, Letting Go, he also talks about this reframe technique. It's a powerful healing technique. So it's where you revisit the past hurts. And you, normally when, something bad's happened to us, something negative, someone's betrayed us, they lied to us, they've done us wrong, we will normally give that a negative meaning. Like, I'm a victim, this person screwed me over. And the meaning that you give things controls your emotional state. So the reframe technique is changing the meaning that you give things so that it changes your emotional state. And it's a way of being able to let go of these past hurts. So for example, one of my childhood wounds was that my dad pretty much physically abandoned me from a very young age, not just me, but my brothers as well. From a very young age, I think from maybe like the age of 2, I don't know, he went and moved to a different country and he lived there until I was about 12. So he wasn't really around much as a child. And then I kind of grew up with the attitude of like, fuck him for not being a dad and for, moving to this other country. And I didn't talk to my dad for like over 10 years. And I had a lot of anger and resentment I was hanging on to. And so I used the reframe technique and I reframed it I acknowledged that my dad had a lot of his own unhealed childhood wounds and traumas. The things he went through as a child, no child should ever go through. And so I started looking at my dad with empathy and compassion, and I realized his childhood really wasn't fair. Then I had the other realization that because of my dad's unhealed childhood wounds and traumas, I realized that if he was around me as a child growing up, I would have basically copped his anger and abuse because he was a very angry person. So by him not being around, this is how I reframed it, by him not being around and living in this other country, it was better for me so that I wasn't around his anger and abuse. I would have been worse off. So that's how I was able to reframe it and give it that positive meaning of like, well, actually it served me by him not being around because, it would have caused me more trauma if I had this angry father abusing me every day. And so that's how I was able to let it go, by changing the meaning from a negative one to a positive one. And you do that by looking for how it served you. There's always lessons in the negative experiences. There are no lessons in positive experiences. The positive good times are just, the fun times that we have. But the lessons are always in those negative experiences. And part of the reason we're here on planet Earth is for soul growth and evolution. Dolores Cannon talks about how Earth is a school, a really difficult school, but it's a school for learning. So we want to learn from our negative experiences, look for the lesson, look for how it served us. So when my dad lived in a different country, it served me by me not having an abusive father around me. So you look for the positive. When you give it that positive meaning, because meaning controls your emotional state, so when you change it from a negative meaning to a positive one, it will put you in a more positive state, and then that's how you're able to just let it go. And it doesn't worry you anymore. So it's a great, powerful healing technique that I highly recommend using. And we're going into forgiveness. So forgiveness is extremely important, right? A lot of people think forgiveness is letting people off the hook. That's not what it's about at all. Forgiveness is for you. It's not for the other person. So forgiveness is an energetic release. It's a way to release anger and resentment, these stored emotions. So when I used the reframe technique with the situation with my dad, and I learned to forgive him for it, I literally felt it leave my chest. Like I felt lighter in my chest. I felt all that anger and resentment that I was clinging on to for over 10 years. I felt it just leave and release. And then I noticed I was a much happier person. So forgiveness is powerful and important. And this is how you're freeing yourself energetically. Now, just because you forgive someone, it doesn't mean that you have to have them back in your life. It doesn't mean that you're on talking terms. You don't have to tell this person you even forgive them, because it's not about them. It's about you. It's for you, so that you can release these emotions like anger and resentment. Dolores Cannon also talked about the importance of forgiveness in order to make this shift to the 5D earth. She says that pretty much what's been keeping us on 3D earth and keeping us reincarnating here is karmic debt. And in order to get rid of your karmic debt is learning the lessons and forgiving people, because the people that have done you wrong are really just there to help you learn the lesson. For example, you may get married to someone who's a narcissist and they made your life hell for 10 years, 20 years, you were married to them. What she talks about is that basically you have soul contracts with these people. So back in the spirit world, before you incarnated here, both of your souls planned out that scenario of being married and one of them being the narcissist, so that the other person can learn a lesson. Like, these scenarios are all planned out before we come here. So this is why she talks about the importance of forgiveness, and how forgiveness is what releases this karmic debt. And it's the karmic debt that's causing us to keep reincarnating. So by getting rid of the karmic debt, it stops you from reincarnating on earth, and you basically level up. Your soul and spirit levels up, so that you can go and be a different alien being on a different planet, or instead of being a human on this planet. So forgiveness is important. So basically she's saying, if you don't forgive, if you're not learning your lessons, you're not forgiving, then you're going to stay with the 3D earth. You have to free up this karmic debt. So in order to get to that place of forgiveness, that's why the reframe technique is a great technique. When you change the meaning by looking for the lessons, you realize how it served you, and then you can forgive the person and even be grateful that this person helped you to learn that lesson. I got screwed over about 2 years ago by someone who I thought was a friend. We were friends for 5 years, thought I knew this person, thought I could trust them, thought they would never do me wrong. And they did me wrong. They did me dirty. And I had a lot of anger and resentment. But I knew about this work, so I looked into, I looked for the lessons in the situation. And basically what had happened is we had got together, we crossed that friendship line, we got together, only lasted a few months. I ended up injuring myself, and then he dumped me because I injured myself. And that made me feel, it did make me feel used, but it made me realize the bigger picture of what was going on, which was that he was just using me. He was like leading me on, lying to me, using me, and then when something went wrong, oh, I'm out, I don't want to know you now. And I was a bit like, quite wounded. I was quite angry. And so I looked for the lesson. Okay, how did this serve me? Well, it made me realize my worth, my self-worth, and start embodying my self-worth. I will never allow someone to treat me like that again. As soon as I see the first red flag, they're gone. I'm not, because I used to be someone that would look for the good in people and ignore the bad. And that's when I realized it keeps getting me burnt. So instead of looking for the good in people, I just see what they show me. And if I see a red flag, you're gone. It also helped me get out of the people-pleasing mentality. And, I could see all these different ways it served me in the lessons. So that's how I was able to reframe it and forgive and let it go. Now, the next point is keeping out of survival mode. Most people spend 70% of their time operating in survival mode. And when you're operating in survival mode, you're operating from survival emotions. You're operating from the ego, because the ego's job is to survive, is to keep you safe. So if you're operating from the ego because you're operating in survival mode, you're going to be operating in the negative frequencies. And keeping yourself out of survival mode is pretty easy. I have videos on this topic as well. But it can be something as simple as deep belly breathing. Breathing deep into the belly, and then blowing the air out, but you want the exhale to be longer than the inhale. And by taking deep breaths like that, that's just one simple way to get you out of survival mode. So I kind of believe that they've created this slavery system to purposely trigger us to be in survival mode, to purposely cause us to be operating from our egos, to keep us in these low frequencies. So I know with inflation, it may be hard for some people, because when you're triggered into like, how do I pay my bills? How do I pay for food? You're triggered into survival mode because you're worried about your basic needs. So it's learning really how to work on your consciousness so that you can attract money. When you can attract money, you don't have to worry about your basic living costs, and then you won't be operating in survival mode. And the opposite of survival mode is creation. This is when we're up in the elevated frequencies, and then this is when we're able to manifest our reality and create. We can't create and manifest our dream reality when we're operating in survival mode, because all of our energy is being used to survive. So this is why it's really beneficial just having that awareness of when you're in survival mode, and then knowing how to get yourself out of it. And like I said, I do have videos on my channel that cover this topic. Now, the last one is Dr. David Hawkins' letting go technique. I honestly recommend reading the book Letting Go, if you want to learn it more in depth. So the book's really all about emotions and how to deal with emotions. And he talks about how all of us have repressed and suppressed emotions in the body. And these repressed and suppressed emotions in the body are keeping us down here as well. And so the letting go technique is using the technique to release these suppressed and repressed emotions from the body, one by one, by one, by one, because we have a lot. So as we keep releasing, this is the key to moving your way up the scale of consciousness. The letting go technique is the key to enlightenment. So he talks about in the book how humans don't really understand how to deal with their emotions, and there are 3 ways that we deal with them. We suppress them, we express them, and he says even when you express the emotion, you're still suppressing some of it in the body. And then there's escapism, which is, using things to distract ourselves from our emotions, drugs, alcohol, TV, food, whatever it may be. And so the letting go technique is how to actually deal with the emotion instead of storing it in the body. And what that is basically when you have a negative emotion come up, instead of resisting it, like we normally resist it, we don't want to feel the negative emotion, so we do things to try to distract ourselves from it. Instead of doing that, you basically just accept that's how you feel. You allow the emotion to be there. So if you're feeling self-doubt, you're feeling anxiety, you're feeling anger, you're feeling shame, you sit with this emotion. You allow it to be there. You don't resist it. You be present with it. You feel into it, because feeling is healing. And you can also observe the emotion, because you're not your thoughts or emotions. You're the conscious being that can take the step back and observe the thoughts and the emotions. And so again, the negative emotion comes up, accept this is how I feel, allow it to be there, sit with it, be present with it, don't resist it, feel into it, observe it. And by doing this, you're allowing yourself to process the emotion, which means it won't get stored in the body. It will be released. So you process instead of suppress. And this is what will free you emotionally. Because like I said, we have a lot suppressed. So we have to start, working on all these different emotions suppressed in the body, one by one, by one, by one, and start freeing ourselves up emotionally. And then what happens is you naturally start raising back up. And as you start raising back up and you're naturally more positive because you've released this heavy, dense energy in the body, you're going to create a much more positive reality. Now, another interesting thing he talks about in this book is that each of these levels, you perceive things differently. As in, you perceive the same scenario differently. So the example he used in the book is like, let's say someone hit your car. You're going to, you're going to have perceived that a certain way in shame, but you're going to perceive it differently in guilt. You'll then perceive it differently in apathy, grief. Like every single level, you will perceive and look at the situation differently. And then as you go up to the higher frequencies, naturally, you are going to just have positive thoughts. You're going to perceive things positively. So for example, let's say someone hits your car in shame, they're operating in shame, or you're operating in shame and they hit your car, and then, oh, see, I'm not good enough. I can't even park my car right. Like you have that sort of like reaction and thoughts. But let's say you were more up in these high frequencies and someone hits your car, your thoughts are more like, oh, no worries, insurance will sort it out. It's all to do with where you're operating at. So by using the letting go technique, working your way up, you're naturally going to have a more positive perception on reality. You're going to naturally just have more positive thoughts and positive reactions to whatever's going on in the external environment. So it's a really amazing technique. And if, like I said, if you want to learn more in depth about this technique, I would recommend reading the book Letting Go, and it will teach you a lot more about dealing with your emotions. And another point before I end this video is the suppressed and repressed emotions in our bodies is what's creating all our health issues, all our diseases, and it's all backed by science. So by using the letting go technique to release these suppressed emotions, it's going to keep your body healthy. So I hope you like this video. It's a long video today, but if you got value out of it, let me know by hitting the like button, and it also helps to the video get pushed out to more people. Also write a comment. And if you like this sort of content, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification. I hope you have an awesome day. Peace.